What this basically is, as you're aware, the sheriff has kind of said the school retention officers have been a high priority for the sheriff, and looking at the funds that are available, it was difficult for us to say we can provide additional funds. The sheriff says he's able to generate 50% of this cost from the school district. So if you project out what 3 additional deputies would be over the next 18 pay periods, and take 50% of that from the schools, which is identified here by supplemental appropriations, and then do transfers of appropriation for the remaining 50%, what the county would have to come up with, we can help him meet one of his priorities and use the monies that are currently available in other appropriated accounts, thereby not increasing our overall budget, but shifting funds to a priority based on what the sheriff has been requesting, so we can get the resource officers in the schools.
I'll address some of our concerns and our needs, and again, I'll say thank you for your time this morning, and I'll address any questions that you have.
Questions from the board?
Well, two things I would say, Sheriff. One is the assumption that this board does not have the same priority for safety is a misconception on your part, because that's not good. The concern we have, and according to the resolution, was that we were going to provide the request for a resource officer for each school under the current formula. Then if there's something changes toward our next quarter or the next 4 or 5 months, work with that issue like we do all our office holders throughout the year as those changes happen. We don't know. We don't know as we sit here now what the revenue source is going to be, where the stream is going to be, and how we're going to deal with that. So what we've attempted to do is put together a process here to make that happen today. That in essence, we can put a school resource officer in place in each of those districts. My question would be, do you feel that we have the flexibility within that to best service down the road 3 months, 6 months from now as far as budget concerns and where we are as far as additional requests, or do you have a feel for that right now?
I think the way we've got it proposed, where we transfer appropriation for current funds, again, is based on priorities. So if the SROs are the priorities, let's put the monies toward those priorities. We can do without some of the other things. I think as long as the sheriff collects that 50% then from the schools, and we can monitor that from the revenues, then we should be able to meet this obligation for this year and build it into the budget for next year as we go through, like we talked about this morning, doing that projection and forecasting out for next year.
Where are you finding funds to reappropriate from?
Well, I think you've got several accounts within your deputies, material supplies, services, and charges.
So you're looking at taking resources that I already have allocated to me and telling me that I can use those resources. So if I have resources, say, for attorney fees for collective bargaining, if you feel the need, you'll move those resources into this position, sir? Is that what you're saying?
That's what we're proposing, from supplies, uniforms. Well, half of that will come from your existing funds. The other half will come from the portion from the schools. So we don't have to look at reducing those other accounts to make the SROs to put them in the schools, which and I know Glenn asked several times, what are your priorities? What are your priorities? If we had done the budget and we only had so much money back then, and we said SROs was a priority, we would have put that money into the SROs, but we wouldn't have had the money to allocate to these other accounts to begin with. You're talking about an ongoing cost. Staffing, personnel costs will be ongoing year after year. It just doesn't make good budgetary sense to take these reserves and spend those down at a clip of $196,000. Those monies would be gone with all the requests that we get from all the departments for additional funding. Those dollars would be gone before we know it, and we wouldn't have any reserve to cover things like what's happening right now with the slowdown in the interest rates, to cover the slowdown in development. We need to allocate those resources to the priorities based on the amount of revenues we're taking in each year. We can't just be spending more money than we're taking in and do that for a sustained period of time.
Mr. Administrator, I appreciate your time, but I think it's inappropriate for you to take funds that I already have budgeted out in different places and tell me that I have to reappropriate my own finances. I think that I'm capable of keeping a good track of my own checkbook. I think it would have been easier. I guess it's safer for the commissioners not to go on record to decline to provide school resource officers to this office. And so we'll take that as no, even though you won't publicly say that. I'll assume that because you can't possibly take resources that have already been budgeted to me and accounted for and tell me to move them somewhere else. So I appreciate your time this morning and your efforts in addressing my concern. Thank you very much.
Sheriff, the budget process, we set your budget, and you need to set your priorities.
I'm good, sir. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
This man right here suspended my husband for 3 days because he doesn't believe he was sick with COPD. Now, I don't agree with a lot of things that you're doing within the sheriff's office right now. And I understand that you bought motorcycles with some funds that could be allocated for these school districts for their new sheriffs. So I'd like to know right now, how much were these motorcycles that you purchased and the uniforms that how much the money you spent on these uniforms that you purchased, and how much of that money could have been allocated. I agree with the gentleman here on the board saying that I don't agree with the way that you've been using the money that you were budgeted. I think that you've been spending it quite carelessly, and I don't agree with some of the things that you have proposed to these employees that serve and protect us. I believe that you have stonewalled their trying to get pay raises and their benefits. These men are here and women are here to protect and serve us, and I think it's a great dishonesty to not give them pay raises. And I think it's a great dishonesty to cut some of the benefits that I'm hearing that you want to cut. And I think that the board should look deeply into this new sheriff. And he is quite aware that he knows that I will not vote for him. I'm hoping that somebody else does run for sheriff this November. And I think that the Republican Party made a drastic mistake in choosing this man here to serve as sheriff. And I think that if we don't pay attention as a community, we're going to be another Al Myers here of spending funds and stuff that we have no business spending. I don't believe spending money on a motorcycle when we get snow almost, 6 to 8. The weather's not that good here to have motorcycles. So I would like to hear an answer from you, saying that you're short 8 positions because of people retiring. Can you explain to me right now why we are short-handed in dispatchers? Mr. Ward, you made a comment in the newspaper about having fit sheriffs within the school district. I believe it was you that made that comment. I am totally in full agreement with that. We do not need people that are getting ready to retire. We need agile, physical fit sheriffs within the school district that can do the job well and healthy to make sure that these kids are well taken care of.
I appreciate your
Thank
comment.
you.
And if you want, when we're done, I'll be more than happy to talk through every question you have. I'll answer with common sense and explain it to you. Okay? Thank you.
We've had a number of elected officials that have taken cuts in their budget. And I don't spend money I don't have. I don't do it in my personal life, and I'm not going to do it with taxpayer money. Our job here as commissioners is to set the budget, and it's his job as the elected official, the appointing authority, to set his priorities. He's made it clear that these are his priorities, so we're trying to make the monies available for that.